Okay, everyone, welcome. I'm happy to call to order this meeting of the Town of Poughkeepsie Town Board on February 12th, 2025, and we're going to start with a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I will start with the roll call. I'm really delighted to hear from Ann that Bill Reuter is home and doing well. So hopefully he'll be back with us soon.
Hi, I'm Barbara Laird. I represent Ward 2. Ann Berger, 3rd Ward.
Michael Zafone, 4th Ward.
Good evening, Ryan Sharp, 5th Ward.
Ann Shershon, 6th Ward.
Felicia Salvatore, Town Clerk.
Emily Spencer, Attorney to the Town.
Rebecca Edwards, Town Supervisor. Okay, so we are going to go over. I'm going to go over the agenda. This is a workshop meeting. We aren't getting some feedback from the mic a little bit. I don't know what's going on, but hopefully it'll be okay. We are not taking votes tonight. This is a meeting to discuss some big issues that have come up, sort of get a preliminary sense of how the board is, hear public, comment on some of these issues, and then see how we might want to move forward at future meetings. We are going to hear a presentation from Poughkeepsie, which is an organization that does textile recycling, and this might go along well with our food scraps recycling.
The meeting room is muted.
I'm sorry?
Hold on.
Is something muted? Everything's muted? Okay, hang on a second. It sounds like folks on Zoom can't hear.
You guys can't hear still?
Can anyone raise your hand? If you
Now we can, yeah.
Now you can?
Now we can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, welcome everyone. Just wanted to say again, this is a workshop meeting. We won't be taking votes tonight, but we'll be discussing some issues to consider whether the board might want to take future action. We have a presentation from Poughkeepsie about textile recycling, and the issues for discussion are the clerk's term of office, nuisance parties, and revising the Hometown Heroes program. I have a few questions about that. And then we'll probably spend much of our time talking about the recommendations from the first round of the Citizens Committee on Housing Affordability, several of those recommendations, and then we'll have reports from committees and liaisons and such from there. Okay, so we'll begin. I move that we suspend the rules for people to speak for up to 3 minutes on any item that's on the agenda tonight. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, then by a vote of 6-0, we move to public comment. Let's start with the folks who are in the room, and then we'll move to Zoom. Okay, Trevor, welcome. Trevor's the chair of the Citizens Committee of Housing Affordability. Welcome.
Thank you, and good evening. Many years ago, my late grandfather was given an opportunity that feels unimaginable today. A building practically for free with the former owner holding the mortgage. It is a deal rooted in trust, community, and a shared sense of prosperity. What happened to that Poughkeepsie? Across the country, real estate has shifted from being the foundation of small business and local economies to a commodified asset class. Buildings aren't homes or businesses anymore. They're investment vehicles, and tenants are treated as numbers instead of neighbors. That's why I support good cause eviction. It ensures that families in Poughkeepsie have basic protections against being displaced without reason. It creates stability for renters while allowing responsible landlords to manage their properties fairly. And it prevents predatory practices that prioritize investor profits over community well-being. To give you an example of community ownership here in Poughkeepsie, meet Dave, a former tenant who got hit by a car and broke his hip crossing the street. As a result, he couldn't work for 8 to 10 weeks. My late grandfather worked with him so he didn't have to pay rent during that period and set up a payment plan on top of rent to resume when he recovered. That decision was of common sense and humanity, treating people as community members. We cannot let the next generation of families, workers, and small business owners be priced out of the community they helped build. If the board takes up good cause eviction, I recommend setting the portfolio size exemption at 1 and setting the high rent exemption at 345% of fair market rent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have other folks in the room who would like to speak? Anyone may speak for up to 3 minutes. John, do you want to join? Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is John Elrick. I'm a resident of Ward 6. I'm also sort of a citizen member on the Housing Committee, Committee for Housing Affordability in the town. And I too want to speak in support of good cause eviction legislation, really for 3 basic reasons. As a renter in Poughkeepsie, I can speak for, I think, a lot of people that the housing crisis and the affordability crisis has put a lot of stress and pressure, a lot of anxiety. And it's also sort of deracinated a lot of people from this area. So number one, I think ultimately good cause eviction legislation provides a baseline for tenant protections, premised on a fair deal for both landlords and renters. I think also, second thing that I want to highlight is that legislation actually really disincentivizes institutional investors and outside speculators who are looking to turn single-family homes into lucrative revenue streams, right, into rentals. That ultimately, I think, further disadvantages people in the town, would-be home buyers, right? So those 2, I think, issues really speak to the fact that this legislation not only would stabilize housing markets, it would also really ensure community well-being, I think, as Trevor spoke to quite eloquently before. So I think there's a reason why communities throughout the Hudson Valley have really pursued good cause legislation, and I really hope that the town takes it up as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak for up to 3 minutes on any issue on the agenda tonight? Come on forward, welcome. And if everybody can just identify your, where you're, which ward you live in, your name would be great, thanks.
Hi, my name is Matthew Montero. I live in Red Oaks Mill. I'm honestly not sure what ward that is located in. I'm here with For the Many tonight. In last year's New York State budget, the town of Poughkeepsie was given the power to pass good cause eviction without the fear of a landlord lawsuit. 1/3 of the town of Poughkeepsie households are renters. Good cause would protect them if they are paying their rent and following their lease. They would be protected from eviction without cause and from rent increase above 10% or the consumer price index plus 5%. If a landlord tries to raise rent by an illegal amount, then the tenant would be able to go to court and ask the judge to reverse the rent increase. This would help tenants afford to stay in Poughkeepsie. Good cause does not hurt the housing supply. It only applies to units built before 2009. New Jersey has had good cause for decades and has built more housing than New York. The cities of Poughkeepsie, Albany, Ithaca, Kingston, Hudson, Newburgh, Beacon, and Rochester have already passed good cause. So has the town of Fishkill and the villages of New Paltz, Nyack, Croton-on-Hudson, and Catskill. The town of Poughkeepsie should be next. For the strongest good cause law possible, we need the town board to define a small landlord as someone who owns no more than 1 rental unit. This will prevent a potential LLC loophole where corporate landlords could create multiple LLCs in order to get around the law. Also, please set the high rent exemption at 345% of fair market rent to protect the maximum number of tenants possible. If we do not take action now, the housing crisis will get worse. We'd like the town board to schedule a public hearing on good cause eviction as soon as possible. If there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that housing is not a commodity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else here who would like to speak? Daniel, welcome.
Hello, Supervisor Edwards and Town Board. My name is Daniel Atona. I live in the city of Poughkeepsie on College Avenue, across the street from the town. In my role as political coordinator at For the Many and previously as co-chair of the Ulster Duchess Working Families Party, I have knocked on many doors in the town and gotten to know many of your constituents. I'm here today to talk about good cause eviction. In last year's New York State budget, municipalities like the town of Poughkeepsie were given the power to opt into good cause without the fear of a landlord lawsuit. 1/3 of town of Poughkeepsie households are renters, and good cause would protect them if they're paying their rent and following their lease. They would be protected from eviction without cause and from rent increases above 10% or the CPI plus 5%, whichever is lower. If a landlord tries to raise rent an unreasonable amount, the tenant would be able to go to court and ask the judge to reverse the rent increase. This would help tenants afford to stay in Poughkeepsie. The cities of Poughkeepsie, Albany, Ithaca, Kingston, Hudson, Newburgh, Beacon, Rochester have already passed good cause. So has the town of Fishkill and the villages of New Paltz, Nyack, and Croton-on-Hudson and Catskill. The town of Poughkeepsie should be next on the list. Let me address some common misconceptions. Good cause is not rent control. Landlords can still raise rents, but a judge would have the final say if a rent increase above 10% or CPI plus 5% is justified. Good cause would not discourage housing construction. New Jersey has had good cause for decades and has built more housing than New York in that time. Also, good cause does not apply to buildings built after 2009. Good cause would only apply good cause would not apply to truly small landlords. If someone only owns one rental unit or lives in their rental building with less than 11 units, then good cause cannot apply. Good cause is not only for big cities. The purple town of Fishkill passed good cause with the Republican council members voting for it. Also, many of the cities that passed it, like Hudson, are smaller than Poughkeepsie. Poughkeepsie is not some sleepy little town. It is a bustling town of 45,000 people with over 13,000 tenants. You have almost as many tenants as Beacon has people, and the tenants here deserve protection too. For the strongest good cause law possible, we need the town board to define a small landlord as someone who owns no more than one rental unit. This will prevent a potential LLC loophole where corporate landlords could create multiple LLCs in order to get around the law. So far, every municipality that's opted into good cause has set the one rental unit thing because, they're worried about the LLC loophole. Also, please set the high rent exemption at 345% of fair market rent to protect the maximum number of tenants possible. The cities of Poughkeepsie and Beacon and the town of Fishkill passed the strongest possible version of good cause as allowed by New York State. By approving a small landlord definition of one unit and 345% fair market rent threshold, you will be passing the gold standard. There is no need to water it down. Trust me, good cause was already watered down in state budget negotiations. Landlords and developers got their say. The Real Estate Board of New York was in the room with Governor Hochul, working closely with her to weaken good cause. This is the compromise version. Because of that, good cause is opt-in and cannot apply to units built after 2009 or owner-occupied buildings with less than 11 units. So please introduce and pass the gold standard version of good cause to protect your tenant constituents as soon as possible. And I'll add one more thing is that, like I said, I live in College Avenue, right? On my side of the street, the city of Poughkeepsie, there are tenants who have good cause protections, and it doesn't make any sense to me that tenants on the other side of the street in the town don't have those same protections. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else who's in the room who would like to speak? And then, if not, we'll move online, but are there other folks? Yes, come on forward. Oh, there's a couple of folks. Shantha and then the gentleman behind. Welcome.
Thank you. Poughkeepsie Town Board. My name is Shantha Tangaya, Ward 3. I moved to Dutchess County 18 years ago, and I have been living in the town of Poughkeepsie for the past 14 years. I rented my house from a landlord who is also a lawyer. About a year ago, when the housing prices is so high, she decided to sell the house. She called my wife and me and said, well, I want to sell the house. If you are interested, you need to put down at least 20% deposit unconditionally to proceed. We felt hesitated. It's unconditional. In case if we can secure the bank loan, we lose the money. And immediately she sends the 30 days notice to vacate after living that house for 13 years. My wife and I were very devastated, and I took time off from work every day hunting houses. In the short period, we could not find a house to live or buy within our criteria or within the budget. We were so worried, and we felt homeless at that point. Eventually, we found some support, hired a lawyer, went to negotiated with the same landlord. We bought the house. Nobody should go through that emotional roller coaster. I fully support the good cause eviction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Come forward. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
My name is Ben Surface. I'm the supervising attorney for the Hudson Valley Justice Center.
Okay, if you could sit, the folks online will be able to hear better when you're talking, when you're identifying yourself through the mic. That'd be great, thanks.
So I only remain standing. I have written testimony that I'm happy
Okay.
to pass around, but I
Great,
can do that
and
after.
you can share that with the clerk and we'll put that into the record, yes. Thanks.
Of course. So as you'll see in the testimony, what I'm here to speak directly to is the small landlord exemption. So as people have already spoken eloquently about, good cause eviction is an incredibly meaningful protection for tenants for the town of Poughkeepsie. And so what our office does day in, day out is we represent tenants facing eviction in Dutchess County, Orange County, throughout the Mid-Hudson region. We are frequently in town of Poughkeepsie Housing Court, and I can tell you firsthand that no cause evictions do happen in town of Poughkeepsie every week. So it is a problem here, and it's something that this law would address, and it would create meaningful impacts for tenants here. The small landlord exemption specifically is something that we're hoping that the council will target and reduce the small landlord exemption to 1 unit, primarily because not only can landlords in the future, if this act is passed, divide their holdings into separate LLCs, it's actually already common practice for landlords to do that. It's not a cynical move. It's not something that's typically done to try and avoid oversight. It's just a common practice for people who own multiple properties to own those properties in multiple LLCs. Now, where this gets tricky with this law, and where this is particularly a problem in housing court, is that there is no right to discovery in a summary proceeding. So when a tenant is facing eviction, that's a summary proceeding, there is no right to say, Judge, I know I'm in court, I'm the defendant, I need documentation to establish how many units my landlord owns, so I know whether or not they actually qualify as a small landlord. The law tries to address this by giving an affirmative burden to landlords to declare whether or not they are claiming the small landlord exemption, and then to say how many units they have. But it is a voluntary attestation, and because there's no right to discovery, a tenant would have to independently find prima facie evidence that the landlord is lying before the judge can order that landlord to provide the documentation to prove what their holdings actually are. So what this small landlord exemption really does is it creates a loophole through which the landlords could, the cynical ones, right? Not everyone's gonna do this, but could exploit a lack of transparency that's provided to tenants in housing court to get away from the protections of the law, even though their units should be covered. So that's why our office has been going around to all these meetings, advocating really strongly that the small landlord definition gets set at 1 unit, because 1, it removes that vulnerability for tenants, and it takes that burden off small town courts to adjudicate these issues. I used to practice in Manhattan, where housing court takes 6 months, and it's motion practice back and forth, and it's bitter and contentious. And while there's lots of things I would do to improve housing court in Dutchess County, having courts mired in litigation over discovery, over whether or not landlords are accurately reflecting their portfolio size, is not something I would wish on anyone. And so we really strongly support the strongest version of the good cause bill.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anyone else in the room who'd like to speak? Yes, please come forward, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hello, my name is Keith Williams. I live in the city of Poughkeepsie. I'm a worker for the many. I've been a renter all my life, and I've lived in over 30 different places, just because we've always been at the mercy of landlords, because the law tends to lean towards their size. And even going out canvassing amongst people in the town of Poughkeepsie, there are people right now without heat, without toilets, without running water, and they're all being told that they need to pay the rent or get out. There's people that are working so many jobs to pay that rent that couldn't be here. There are people living in fear because they think, what if it doesn't go through? What if I don't have those protections? Then they'll come after me. And I've lived this, and I've seen this amongst people here that live in Poughkeepsie and in the Hudson Valley, and good cause will give them the hope that the people that they put their votes into each year are doing something about this crisis, because we understand that people need to make a living, but making a living off of people's living situation is dark in itself. So that's why I asked that you guys pass the good cause eviction in the strongest one possible for your constituents that are going through this right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else who's in the room who'd like to speak? Yes, welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Call. Good evening. Before I begin, thank you so much for your service. I am a resident of the town of Poughkeepsie, but also have the honor of representing District 6 in the county legislature. As you all know, housing, especially housing that doesn't take up more than 30% of one's monthly gross income, is really hard to come by. And it is also one of the highest priorities of people looking to start a life, looking to build a life, or really even looking to sunset a life. And I commend the town supervisor, the board, and especially the Volunteer Citizens Committee on Housing Affordability for tackling this important issue and for presenting us with a set of recommendations, one of which is to adopt good cause eviction legislation. This legislation, especially when crafted thoughtfully, will provide some very basic security to renters, and it will also provide common sense, good practices to landlords. More critically, it will discourage large corporate firms, especially from out of state, that do not have ties to this area from engaging in bad faith and predatory practices. I'd like to reiterate some of the recommendations that the committee has very thoughtfully put forward, and these include setting the portfolio size exemption at 1 unit, setting the high rent exemption at 345% of fair market rate, providing language for adjudication so landlords have the ability to reasonably respond to property tax increases, and ability to revisit this law in 5 to 10 years. And I'm here really as somebody who also has experience as a landlord, so I am concerned about the small landlord too. In conclusion, I really want to highlight a recent report from the New York State Comptroller Tom D. Napoli, stating that homelessness has doubled in New York State between January 2022 and 2024. In Dutchess, we saw an 11% increase in homelessness in this period. And the comptroller recommends, and this recommendation is shared across the board by our commissioners too, that one of the major ways to reduce homelessness is to prevent evictions. Eviction is a really interesting word. When I think of it in the singular and as something as having one direct impact. In fact, eviction is just the first domino that causes several other dominoes to fall in a way that is absolutely devastating. A kid can no longer go to their school. Person who's working may no longer have the ability to go to their job. Somebody who's sick may no longer have the ability to get to healthcare. It is incredibly expensive for us to take care of those who are unhoused. It is our moral responsibility to do so. A very simple fix, and this just sounds really, in some ways, instrumental for me to sit here and say this, good cause eviction is a very effective, low-cost fix to a plethora of problems that we're currently facing.
Lisa, I just want to make the world 3.5 minutes.
3.5 minutes? I'm
just
sorry.
to let you-
Okay.
That's
So
okay.
I hope you will pass good cause eviction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else in the room? Yes, welcome.
Hello, I'm Deborah Bucher. I'm actually a resident in the city of Poughkeepsie, and I go to church at the First Congregational United Church of Christ on Mill Street, which is that church right next to the Mill Street Brewery, if you know where that is and you know where my church is. And I am a person who loves to walk, so I walk to church from where I live on South Randolph Avenue. many Sunday mornings. And the difference between the number of people who are clearly without homes before the pandemic and now is just really, really striking. On a Sunday morning, it used to be very, very quiet. Now there's just people everywhere, unhoused people. And as a person of faith, I just want to ask that you really seriously consider this legislation and you pass it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak, who's in the room? Yes, I see another hand. Welcome, come forward. How are you?
Hello, my name is Samuel Petty. I live in Ward 2 on Carroll Street, and I worship at Christ Church, Poughkeepsie. Our church has been offering a code blue homeless shelter for the last 2 or 3 years. I have been in Poughkeepsie for 2. I came to Poughkeepsie because I was homeless 2 years ago, and I am still currently, I am not homeless now, but I am insecure in my housing and struggling also with disabilities. And my housing has been easily 50 to 60% of my income from month to month for as long as I've been here. I really strongly urge you to pass this so that myself and people like myself, who I have seen very, very many often, can have a little more security in our lives and build something here in Poughkeepsie. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming and sharing your story. I appreciate it greatly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wish you the best. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak? Let's go to the folks online because there's several people who have their hands up, and then we'll come back if there is anybody else who wanted to join. I believe Emma is the first with a hand up. Welcome. And you can just unmute yourself.
I did unmute myself. It's not letting me do the video.
We can hear you now. Yeah, we don't do video. We're
okay.
We're not putting people on video. We've had some difficulties. So
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, well, hi, I'm Emma Arnoff. I work in Ward 6. I live in the town of LaGrange, but hoping to win for county legislator of District 2 and then be representing Ward 3 at some point soon. And I am here, as many others, speaking tonight to support the Citizens Committee on Affordable Housing's proposed good cause eviction. It is critical we opt into this new state law. As I've been running for office, I'm learning more and more about our community's needs. It is clear that affordability and housing security are top of mind for many people. There's a lack of affordable housing for renters, making it very difficult to live and thrive in our community. Most critically, the board should consider 2 things. 1, set the portfolio size exemption at 1 unit to avoid distant firms and corporate landlords exploiting LLC loopholes to engage in predatory practices. And 2, set the high rent exemption at 345% of fair market rent to protect renters from landlords simply raising the rent on standard market rate units to avoid the law. For our community to thrive, we need to make sure our citizens are protected and having housing security so they can best support our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. I believe the next person is Georgette. Georgette, welcome. If you can unmute yourself. Oh, up, now we can hear you. Yes, welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Georgette Martin, Ward 4. I support what everybody else is supporting, but I want to talk about the issue of the nuisance law. I want to thank Rebecca and the board for improving the quality of life in Ward 4 tremendously, because we've been cracking down on these big parties that the students have. I feel that this would help if they have to get a permit to have a party. I think it would help us help the town keep track of who's having parties, and if there's a big party going on, that it would be a reason for getting the party dispersed, that it would give the police another tool for breaking a big party up. I feel that if a resident wants to have, let's say, a graduation party or maybe a wedding reception in their backyard, getting a permit for a one-day party shouldn't be a problem. But in our area, we have these parties like every weekend, and sometimes during the week. In fact, I hear there was a party just a couple of weeks ago in the freezing cold. There were kids outside, drinking beer and just whooping it up. And my only concern is 100 as the starting point for the permit. I think that's too much. I mean, everybody there, you think about having your next door neighbor having 100 people in their yard, listening to music, jumping up and down, drinking beer. I really feel that the limit should come down to 75 or 50. I mean, it just, to me, you have to stop and think of what the residents, the people who live there all year round are having to put up with. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think the next person is Kara. Welcome.
Yes. Yeah, hi. Thank
Hi.
you for taking the call. Yes, I go to the First Congregational Church, and we've been involved with the For the Many group and just learned about the good cause eviction laws and fully support it. That's all I have to say, but thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kara. And then Anna, welcome.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Town Supervisor Edwards, board and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Anna Shaw, and I am here to express my strong support for the Citizens Committee on Housing Affordability's recommendations to implement the Town of Poughkeepsie Masterly Home Sharing Program and to adopt the good cause eviction legislation. In my opinion, these initiatives are critical steps in addressing the increasing housing crisis in our community, preventing displacement and ensuring stability for families, seniors, and individuals struggling to find affordable housing. Excuse me. Currently, Dutchess County faces an 11% homeless rate, highlighting the urgent need for housing solutions. Families and children, in my experience, are among the most vulnerable to displacement, often forced into temporary shelters or unstable living situations. If we fail to act, the crisis will only deepen, pushing more residents to the brink of homelessness. The proposals before us tonight provide practical, community-driven solutions to curb the housing insecurity and offer more affordable options. And I'd also like to just go into a little bit deeper with my support of the good cause eviction legislation. I strongly support it to ensure housing stability to prevent families from being unfairly displaced. The rising cost of rent and the lack of tenant protections have left many families, particularly low-income households, at risk of losing their homes. These good cause eviction protections would assure that tenants cannot be evicted without a legitimate reason, preventing arbitrary displacement. It would limit excessive rent hikes, which often force families out of their homes with little notice. It would promote long-term stability, reducing the number of families facing sudden housing insecurity. By passing the legislation, the town of Poughkeepsie would take essential steps toward curbing displacement and ensuring that residents, especially working families in our community and seniors, can remain in their homes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we also have Steve. Welcome, Steve.
Hi. Actually, I'm going to speak on the law there for the tenant stuff. While I agree that tenants need protections and that, I just want to, kind of make sure that I'm not forgetting the small landlords. And again, one unit, some may have two. As a former small landlord, I had great tenants that I never wanted to leave, but things happened that they left. But unfortunately, there are expenses onto landlords in that sometimes need to be passed along. I agree, like I said, I want to make sure this law recognizes that the landlords are not always the bad guy. They have expenses, their taxes, everything else goes up, the cost of maintaining the properties. As long as there's a reasonable thing to protect the smaller landlords, I'm not opposed to it, but don't always make the landlords the villain. Again, as a former landlord, I did everything to keep my tenants, happy and in there because that was a cost savings to me.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks. Is there anyone else either in the room or online who would like to speak? Okay, going once, going twice.
This is on any item.
Thank you, everybody. If we move this forward, we will be having a public hearing, as someone mentioned, so there will be further conversation, but this was a good first set of testimony. I would move that we return to regular session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so then we're back in regular session, 6-0. And I believe the first thing we have is a presentation from Helpsy. Looking online, I believe Nicole, right, is with us. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining
Hi.
us.
Thank you. Am I able to share my screen to do the presentation, or are we avoiding that for now?
You can share screen, I believe. Let's see if we can
If
get
not,
that.
then I'll undo the video for that.
Okay.
But just try, and then if not.
See what happens, because usually I think you can. There we go. Oops. There
Do you
you
see
are.
it?
We
Yes.
can see it. Thank you very much.
Perfect. And can you hear me well?
We can.
All right. And feel free to interrupt me. I want to make this as conversational and simple as, and to make it flow easily. So hi, I'm Nicole. I'm the Senior Relationship Manager at Helpsy. Helpsy's mission is to keep clothes out of the trash, provide honorable work, and of course to earn growing profits. We're a certified B Corp and a public benefits corp, and we're proud to meet those high standards of verified social and environmental performance. So why do we do what we do? First of all, environmentally, we've been able to collect 31 million pounds of clothing. We've helped avoid CO2, 207 million pounds of CO2, and we also have saved 6 billion gallons of water. The social aspect, as an employer, we offer full-time positions to our employees. We offer living wages. Every person is given commissions, and we're all also shareholders of the company, as well as we are a second chance employer. Community-wise, we've already donated over $50,000 to our nonprofit partners. We've donated over 5,000 coats, and again, we're a B Corp and a public benefits corp. The economic reason for what we do, we've helped avoid $1.3 million worth of disposal fees. We've enabled 10,000 reuse economy jobs, and we support 800 U.S. thrift stores. So as you might know already, textiles are the fastest growing waste stream. 85% of clothes end up in the trash. This chart just shows you the percentage change per capita of how you can see how textiles have grown 50 to 55% more. Textiles are really 6% of your municipal waste, as you can see here on the chart in blue, along with, there's food scraps and yard waste, paper, but textiles take up 6% of that. As a company, Helpsy operates 3 lines of business. We have the collect business, which is how we were able to collect over 31 million pounds of clothing. We have over 1,200 locations in 10 states. The Helpsy Source business is where we created sorting technology to sort the clothing that we collect, and this has helped supply 6,000 thrift stores and resellers with materials. And then our trading business, we've brokered 12 million pounds, and we do that yearly. And that can be not just clothing, it can be shoes, toys, and household items. This is a little bit of our map. As you can see, New York and Connecticut are in blue, and then it starts from New Hampshire, goes down to the top of Northern Virginia, and then we're also in South Carolina. So these are your typical collection modes. Helpsy offers the classic mode, which is the clothing bins. Our drivers are trained to clean in and around the bins, and those bins are serviced starting as weekly service, but they can be serviced daily to multiple times a day to once a month, depending on the usage. We also offer the clothing drive opportunity, which is not just for municipalities, it's for anyone that wants to fundraise, whether it's a community fundraiser, a church, a school. And then we also offer home pickups in select municipalities residents would be able to log on to our website or give us a call and schedule an appointment. We also work with thrift stores. Like I said before, we provide curated inventory to them, but we also pick up their excess or unwanted materials. This is a little bit about Helpsy Source. This shows that we're able to sell the stuff online. We use the technology that we created to sort them by brand and condition. And then we provide these materials to thrift stores and resellers by brand and condition. This is Helpsy Trading. So Helpsy buys millions of pounds of used goods from large thrift stores, smaller collection companies, and wiper rag manufacturers. And then we also sell clothing to sorters, secondhand sellers, and industrial users. What happens to the clothing? Well, SMART says that 85% ends up in your waste stream, whether that's the trash, the landfill, or the incinerator, but actually 95% of that can be reused as clothing or something else. 45% can be reused as is, as the clothing, whatever it is, clothing, linens, towels, blankets. 30% has to be turned into wiper rags. And then 20% can be used for insulation, whether that's for carpet padding, seat insulation, things like that. Helpsy's goal is to focus on reuse and recycling. So 95% of what we collect as a company is sold for reuse or recycling. 5% of that is unusable due to contamination. That can be whether it's mold, blood, chemicals, things like that. Of the clothing that we sell, 90% is sold in bulk to graders and thrift stores. As many of you know, it is a global market, but as a company, Helpsy has many domestic partners. And due to our history of with these partners, we have the ability to buy back the items they don't like. So that includes plus sizes and coats. And then the coats we give away free in the Northeast to nonprofits, municipalities, and different community organizations. Growing percent of what we collect is sorted right in our warehouse in New Jersey. And then we're also doing something new. We're trying to help support new pathways for chemical and mechanical recycling. This is just a quick little video, shows you how our sorters sort the material, and that's a little clip of what our technology looks like. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I could follow up with one question. So I know that you work with Dutchess County already, and that you have a bin on Sandock Road, actually in the town of Poughkeepsie. But could also, we're also talking about putting one at the senior center or one at town hall. And what is the nature of the partnership you have with municipalities? There's a payment to the town, right? A small payment for our role, right? How does that work?
Yes, correct. So whenever we place the bins, we pay the municipality per pound of what's collected in the bins. And that's sent to the municipality on a quarterly payment. We also provide the tonnage reports for that. We can offer, do you want me to tell you the price right now, or?
Sure, it's good to know.
Okay, so for bins, we can offer 7 cents per pound. Home pickups is 2 cents per pound. And for clothing drive events for municipalities, it's 10 cents per pound.
Okay.
And the municipality has the option to do any of the three or the bins like you had previously decided to work with.
So we could do the bins, and then we could discuss whether the town wants to do a clothing drive or invite local organizations like sports leagues or somebody else to do or whatever, whoever might want churches to do that part if they wanted to do so.
Yes, absolutely.
Nicole, I just have a comment. I was a question, but as I listened to your really great presentation, it answered it. So I'm excited that you will also take, socks with holes in them and t-shirts that have rips, because those are the things that I feel would never go to a Goodwill. Yeah. And then I would say, well, if I can't use it as a rag because I have a giant bag in my garage, then it goes in the garbage. So I love the fact that you will take those textiles and reuse them. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions?
Are these bins just gonna be on town hall property, or?
We're thinking one at town hall and one at the senior center would be good places
Like
for
not
people.
commercially all over town?
No, they would just be, I mean, we could talk about where the best locations are, but this seemed maybe to accompany food scraps recycling too, as a sort of like, let's find the maximum way, and then, cardboard next, if we can find some. Are you doing cardboard? Because I feel like we need to give people places to take things, and in order to keep it out of the trash, because it's expensive to sign for a trash service as well. And, the smaller your household bins are, if you can, people might not know this, but, the less you use, you can ask your hauler for smaller bins and then pay a lower monthly fee for your garbage, so. Any other questions? Does it seem like something we should explore?
Absolutely.
Okay, then we'll follow up, and see what we can find out. Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us.
I think the limit for home pickup is 3 bags. Was that correct?
Oh, good question.
It's not an actual limit. We just want, we'll pick up any amount that you have. It could be 1 bag to 30 bags. We just want to be a little bit more sustainable in our mission, so we recommend at least 3 bags, but it's not set in stone. You can donate 1 small bag and we'll still collect it.
Oh, so you're recommending at least 3 bags?
And you
I
could,
see.
and you could bag up like blankets and all that kind of stuff too.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Stuffed
blankets,
animals,
tablecloths, comforters, those kinds of things, any kind of textile, is that right?
My husband's
Correct.
smiling in the
Okay.
audience.
I have so many sheets of blankets.
Yeah, some of us are thinking, like, starting to calculate how many pounds we have from the
I
closet
have a
somewhere,
lot.
right? So, yes. And shoes are also, you can
Oh,
also, and
Shoes, that's great.
put shoes and handbags, is that right?
Correct, shoes and handbags in any condition, from the worst quality to the best quality, we're gonna take it.
And it would probably be helpful if we sorted them that way, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will look into it more and figure out what would be the right space. Just one last question, sorry. Do you have a problem with people leaving stuff by the bins and ending up with a lot of trash? You said you basically monitor, you figure out how often the bin is filling and try to send the drivers, at the right interval to make sure there's not a lot of trash built up?
Correct, so if, residents do, for some reason, leave it outside, we take care of that. The goal is to clean it up before anyone sees that mess so that it doesn't become an issue. But sometimes residents are unsure how to put it in the bin or the bags are too big, so they leave it outside, but we make sure to service it as often as needed to avoid all of that.
Okay, great. These are places where we have people here
Yeah,
regularly,
that's
so
what I
we
was
can
gonna
keep an
say.
eye.
It's the ones that are,
Right.
yeah.
We'll have people nearby. Okay, thank you again very much.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have some issues for discussion tonight that I have come up, and it's a little bit of a laundry list, but I want to just throw these out there for the board's discussion. Obviously, I think most of the public comment was about good cause, but let's go back to a couple of other issues. So first of all, the town of Poughkeepsie receiver of taxes has a 4-year term. The highway superintendent has a 4-year term. The town clerk has a 2-year term. And so I've been in conversation with Felicia about the possibility of putting on the ballot in November a proposal to voters. Voters would have to change the length of the term. Putting on a proposal to change the term to 4 years.
Again.
We're trying, right? You've tried this before, but we're gonna try it again. I hope. It seems like this is a professional position. Felicia, you might want to speak to this, but it's often held by someone who's come up through the ranks and has done the work. And as in the highway department and with the receiver of taxes, it makes sense for it to be a longer term. As someone who's in the 2nd year of a 2-year term, I can attest to how much you need to learn, and 4 years seems to me to make sense. But I'd like to just hear from Felicia and from other board members, whether this is something we might bring forward. Ultimately, the voters would decide, but we could decide to put it on the agenda
Right.
for the
So
fall,
my
the ballot.
office, which, when I first got this job, had absolutely no idea what I was applying for. Just did a lot of different things back then and learned that, I had 3 jobs when I first took this job as the deputy town clerk. This job is like 3 jobs, and it's, to have a 2-year term, to learn everything that you need to learn, and then focus on running the very next year, especially now since early voting's in place, so you really have to start the process that much earlier. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, for me now that I've been here for a while, it's different, but for somebody new, I wouldn't really wish that on anybody. And even my deputies now that probably by the time I leave will maybe have around 5 to 7 years experience, keep saying, when are you leaving? No, not yet. You know, there's still things every day that come up that I have no idea how to take care of it, you know, and it's an interesting job, and to me, it should be a 4-year term.
Could you talk?
It's not really gonna benefit me so much, but for the people in the future, I would really like to try again.
It occurs to me, backing up the meeting, could you talk a little bit about what the town clerk does, just for a minute?
Well, let's see, I drove to Newburgh today to give somebody their birth certificate because they were very desperate for services. So we do everything from dog licensing to this, to opening bids, to helping people with dual citizenships, to, I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on.
Marriage licenses.
Marriage licenses, name
Death
changes,
certificates.
death certificates, which is, you know.
You're keeping track of births, marriages, and deaths in the town. You're the official record keeper, 24/7. Also, you know,
If
with
somebody
someone
dies,
passes
then
away, right, then that's your
yeah,
job.
it's a
And
lot, but
also hunting licenses,
I forgot
dog
about that.
licenses,
Yeah, there's a
as
lot.
well as these meetings, right? So
Yeah.
just getting a sense of the broad scope of the job.
It's very broad, it's very interesting, and, you know, some years I'm like, gosh, can't somebody run against me? Maybe they'll be better. Maybe, you know, it is a lot. But it is very interesting, for sure, 100%. And it's different for each town, because there's some town clerks that we're 45,000 people. We have a comptroller, so there's a lot of duties that I would normally be in charge of if I, say, had 3,000 residents, because they then have to bring vouchers to the town. There's so many, you know, it all depends on the size of your town, and, you know, different town clerks do different things. Some town clerks are also the tax receiver. I would never want that job.
We did try this once before, didn't we?
Twice.
And it failed.
Twice it failed.
Oh, because it failed in elections. It failed on the ballot.
It failed for different reasons, which there's no really need to go into it.
Oh, but
But-
it was voted on?
It was voted down twice. And I think the town of Poughkeepsie there's probably only like 3, maybe not even 3 now. In Dutchess County, everybody else is 4-year term.
Yeah.
I have
Oh, I
no
see.
idea why it's always been 2.
I really like the idea. I just wanted to ask if we know, if we put it on the ballot for November, right? That's when it would go on the ballot.
Yes.
Would then that next January start the
I
4-year
think
term?
that you have the option of it starting right away or the following term. I think that's something legal would have to look into. I personally, at this point, you know, you know, and I don't even really know 100% if we're running for 1 term or, you know, I'm a little bit out of the loop.
Yeah.
Still in court, but so.
Yeah, it's still in court, whether this is a 1-year or a 2-year term. I
Yeah.
think, if I remember right, it would not apply to this term.
Right,
I
so it
think
would
we
apply to the
can't,
next-
people have to elect, because you
have to
can't
know
at
what
the
they're
same
running for.
time elect someone to a 2-year term and on the same ballot agree to give them a 4-year term.
I think
But
it has been done, but I think
But
we
we can
haven't
check.
tried it that way.
I
I don't
think it
know.
would be the following
I
term.
don't think
Yeah.
anybody has a problem with that, so.
No, I
we
mean,
can
like I
certainly do
said, it doesn't, to me, it's, you know,
If that sounds like it makes sense, then we'll bring as a resolution.
Yeah.
I think we should keep trying till it passes for those coming forward, to be honest.
To wear people down.
Okay, we'll give it a shot then, that's great. Okay, next issue is nuisance parties. And that is this issue of, and I will say that this is, what I'm proposing is a compromise, and we can sort of, 100 is not a, you know, 100 is, any number you choose is arbitrary. I think it is somewhat onerous. People have a lot of parties at their houses, and to set it at too low means that you're asking people to come in for a permit for, you know, asking a lot of people to come in for a permit. I'll say that the biggest concern I had is what was last year an 800-person neighborhood crawl through the Fairview neighborhood. And I was really distressed to find that, you know, across a whole neighborhood, there was an 800-person party, and there was no mechanism for the town to say, no, that's not a good idea. Because it was obviously not a block party. Not everyone there had been consulted. Most of the intervening houses between the 3 student houses that were involved had not been consulted at all. So it seems like for very large parties like that, we need a mechanism. What's the balance between making sure we have a mechanism for that and not overburdening people? My sense is that pretty much anywhere in town, if someone is going to have a party with 100 people at their house, they're going to be significant enough parking and traffic and safety issues, that it's not unreasonable for the town to say, hey, give us a heads up, and you need a permit for this so that we know it's happening. Because it's likely to be pretty, likely to cause challenges, in just parking and logistics, if nothing else. But I'm happy to talk this over. That's sort of the opening proposal, having talked with, Felicia, speaking of the town clerk, the person for whom people would have to come in and get a license, having talked with, different residents, I hear some concern about it being set lower, but that's sort of why we framed it for a discussion tonight.
We did do the nuisance party law
Right.
specifically for that, so my question is, why is that not working? And can we?
Well, it's all about enforcement, but you have to actually have, they have to get a couple tickets first, and then the nuisance law kicks in.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, but the problem is if you live in Fairview with the colleges, kids, 100, that could be any given night.
Right.
So, I'd like to see the number lower, so it kicks in a little harder.
I just feel bad for the normal people having 1 or 2 parties a year, being the ones that have to pay for the college
They
fee,
could come to the town board and ask for forgiveness at that point. If
Yeah,
it's
I know,
somebody
I'm
having
just, I'm just
private
saying,
party, they could certainly waive it.
I feel like we're,
But if some-
punishing the good for
But
the
if somebody,
sake of the
but they
evil.
could come to the town board and say, look, this was a
Yeah. That's just my
graduation party or
opinion.
something.
I agree.
mean,
Where did this all stem from? Is it mostly the Fairview area?
Yes, and
Yeah.
we have, everything we do has to be, unless we carve out something for the college, which I tried with
Yeah, I think that's the
multiple
way.
attorneys.
Yeah,
And we can't do it because everything has to affect the town.
Right, yeah.
City of Poughkeepsie was able to do it, so they have some tremendous attorneys, I guess, but we can't do that.
Because it's
I've
like
been told it's illegal.
Airbnb, we have these rules, but are people gonna follow them?
No, I mean, if I was gonna have a party, I would not come to the town to get a permit. I'd be like,
I think
I'm
I've
gonna
had
do what
2
I wanna
phone
do
calls
on
in my
property.
22 years of people having a wedding that asked if they needed a permit, that's.
Yeah, but that's the point, that if your
I mean, how
neighbors
much policing
complain, the
are we
police
gonna
can
do?
come and say, hey, you don't have your permit, you're done.
I
Turn
know,
it
but I
down
thought-
now, go
But
home.
what about me?
But I
mean,
thought with a
I'm-
nuisance party, if people complain,
Yeah.
the police could do something then.
I mean, I just can't understand.
That's just,
It just seems a little like an overstep of.
Well, if you lived in Fairview, your
Yes,
overstep
and
would be
that's what I
every
mean.
Thursday,
That's what I
Friday,
mean.
Saturday, and Sunday
I
afternoon.
agree, where that ward is different because of Marist, but like the everyday citizen, like, I just can't imagine people would do it, and I wouldn't do it either. I'd be like, no, I'm not getting a permit, it's my property, I'm gonna do what I wanna do on it.
What's interesting though is
Once a year.
we already tell people that you need to mow your grass to be less than 6 inches,
Yeah.
right? And you need to bring your garbage cans in,
Right.
and you
Yeah.
can't keep your camper in the front yard. The town actually has a number of,
Yeah, how much more
regulations.
are we going to regulate our people?
Well,
Well, but I mean, if you feel that way, then let's keep it at 100, because, I mean, nobody has a wedding for 100 people at their house, or graduation party.
I'm just thinking about like a graduation party or.
No, they don't hit 100.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
I have a
what
lot
I'm
of
gonna have
friends,
in the
I
spring,
have
you know.
had 100.
Yeah,
My kids
I
are all
mean-
done, but.
Yeah, I'm
had
having a
100.
Oh, hell
graduation
yeah.
party
But
this
that-
summer.
right.
Who knows
Heck
how
yeah.
many I'm
But
gonna
that's over the
right.
course of time and hours.
Yeah.
This is a bunch at one time.
Yeah.
So, and 50
Right.
kids in with houses that are so close to each other can create a lot of havoc in a
Yes,
short amount of
it
time.
is terrible in Fairview. I mean, Mike, I
Right.
feel for you and the residents that live over there. I mean, it is quite the
Yeah.
unique area, and I wish that it
The
was,
police have cracked down quite a bit.
I know.
And we find a lot of people. There's a lot of different parts that all have to work together, the police, the courts, and the follow-up, but, it doesn't always work the way we'd like it
I know,
to.
is Marist not accommodating? I mean, I know you've worked with them closely for years over this.
Supervisor Edwards and I have requested a meeting many times
Yeah.
with the president, not been able to get one. We have talked to Marist, and they have been accommodating, and since the last time we met, it has gotten a lot better. We met with the head of security and the dean of student affairs, and I actually ran into him at the function, the university day. And he asked me how it was going. I said, well, knock on wood. I said, so far so good since that time, so.
Yeah, what do they do to enforce it? I mean, that's the thing, like, when the pub crawl's happening, I mean, I was aware of it.
Nothing with the pub crawl, but these are new people coming in now, so.
Right. The issue is, the issue, to go back to Felicia's point, is that the nuisance party ordinance allows, if a party's totally out of control at 3:00 in the morning and it's incredibly loud, then you can send the police to shut it down.
Sure.
Although often there's a dispute about how loud is, and sort of,
Oh, yes.
it's right.
I
This
know.
is about starting at the beginning and saying, okay, a party that has 100 or more people in it, and I don't actually think it's just Fairview. I think there are other places where we have had problem properties. Where if you're gonna have that many people at your house, it's reasonable to come in and let the town know so that we have a heads up and pay a $20 fee or whatever. If someone's gonna, honestly, if someone doesn't get the license and they have, a sedate party in their backyard and no one ever calls for noise or anything or parking, then it's probably not an issue. But we have a number of areas around town where people hold big parties and the traffic and parking alone can be a challenge. So I think it's worth considering.
get the permit.
But I think what I want to do is take just a few more minutes and frame who on the board thinks we shouldn't do this at all, and who on the board thinks we should do this at what sort of level, because
Can I
that's
just-
kind of what we're trying to figure out.
Can I just ask one more question? Because I know, I believe Rebecca said in building that they don't even touch tent inspections for people that are having private parties.
Right.
And so what would happen if we permit a party and something happens and there's mayhem and people get shot? Are we then liable because we allowed a permit for this party?
I don't believe so.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm just questioning that part of it. If there's some kind of mayhem that goes really bad because we permitted it, are we allowing?
Yeah, is there any
No,
liability?
I mean, I
Could
don't
we
think
put
can
something
ask
on
to check with
the
insurance
application?
Company, but I don't see that as.
That's,
an issue.
okay, I'm just
We can
asking.
check with our insurer.
Yeah.
The purpose of the permit is just to tell us, to keep, if it's the same house with different people in it, but
Right.
they've had issues at that home
Right.
before, this gives us an opportunity to say, look, this didn't work last time, no matter who applied for it, but, yeah, we're gonna say no to this one.
Most likely, they won't apply for it, and at least it'll
Yeah,
give the
we'll just
police
have
a
the party
reason to
anyway.
shut it down.
Yeah.
So would, other folks, did anybody want to weigh in on what you think, or whether if people don't have an opinion, we can think about this further, right? But
Well, I see a distinction between calling the police because there's a really loud party at the house next door and you can't go to sleep. Like, I see that as just the nuisance law.
Yeah.
But over 100 people, I had a graduation party, I can't imagine it was over 40 people. Like, I have a third of an acre, they're not gonna fit. I don't even have enough chairs for that, so,
that's just-
100 people, it's mainly just to give the police and EMS a heads up that it's happening, so they're aware. And, maybe if people were gonna take some time off, maybe they just get a couple more people ready in case there's an event or something happening, especially for like the ambulance service.
So are we gonna enforce it if people see it and is that gonna become a thing that they have to say, hey, you got a permit or you don't have a permit or?
Yeah, like who's enforcing
That's what
all
I'm
that?
saying. It's
What's
like just
overreach?
another
Depending on
thing.
if we set it at 70, if we set it at, say, 75 or 50, and I come for permit, I'm gonna tell you, I'm only gonna have 49 people there through the course. At no point is that in a day, is that party gonna be over 49 people.
Right.
So I may have 100 show up throughout the 12-hour day, but I'm only gonna have 49 there at any one time.
Right, so I don't want us to spend huge amounts of time on this,
Sorry.
but I will say, my compromise is not working.
I'll be
Because there are
quiet.
some people who don't wanna do it at all, and there's some people who would like to do it with a much lower level, at like 50 or something like that. And never the twain shall meet, and I was hoping that maybe, saying, look, we're only gonna do this in the case of really very large substantial parties. Honestly, before the neighborhood crawl rolls around in Fairview again, I would like us to have some kind of enforcement mechanism so that we don't have to wait until an 800-person party has spread through an entire neighborhood and it's 2 a.m. and people are urinating off of roofs and things like that. At the beginning, you can just say, no, an 800-person party that's not a block party, that, the neighborhood is not, but it is not a good idea. So that's kind of the issue that we're trying to
What
deal
would
with here.
prevent them from having the party?
The police.
Well,
The fact that it is literally not permitted.
What's the
right?
punishment?
Well, it's just that the police can disperse it, right?
They can't-
Simply
they can
based on
disperse it.
size.
I'm just playing devil's advocate, because they can disperse it with or without the permit.
No, they can't.
Okay,
Not now.
so
if you
they
tie up
see-
traffic and you tie up all our roads, and we can't get an emergency vehicle through, now you got a problem, then we can fine you.
Right, so
You're causing it as the renter or homeowner, the person in charge of that property, we can go after you. Right now, you can't. So that's the deal.
You
that's
can
the
go,
reason.
you can address noise or problems after an event is going on, right?
Right.
But you can't de facto at the beginning say, no, this is not a permittable event.
Can we just rewrite the nuisance party chapter in such a way that it would,
This also gives us a mechanism to know who's in charge, what, and we can have some control over
But
the times.
my
and,
question is
you know.
such that, like, if somebody wants to have a party over at Maris, and this is in place, say we sign off on this.
You're not talking about on campus, that's not our
No,
problem.
no,
This
no,
is just
no,
off
all the
campus,
off
right?
campus, right,
In
right.
off campus
So
neighborhoods,
say we
right?
sign off on it, because honestly, either way, fine, you know, people aren't gonna get the permit anyway, so who cares? So it's just gonna be this thing. Now Maris, they wanna have their, not Maris, but the kids that live off campus, because, right, it's not Maris, the pub crawl isn't really Maris sanctioned, is it?
It's all Marist. It's not sanctioned by Marist.
No,
all
it's the
Marist
kids, it's over
Yeah.
on Fairview and East Cedar and all the things, right? They're still gonna do that, like they do every single year, with or without a permit, correct?
We're not gonna allow it. We're gonna try
But-
not to, but this is
What do
a
you mean
help.
allow it? How can you
Because they
stop
don't
it?
have the permit. Because they
But
don't have the permit, we can stop them right at the beginning and say, sorry, you don't have the permit, go home.
We spent last year between the police, I think.
But they don't go home.
I think the police, I'm not sure, I think
They're
Rebecca
college
did.
kids. They
You
roam
looked
from
up
the
a
house.
couple
Hold on,
numbers to
hold on,
call,
everybody.
and we tried to find the landlords who owned the houses. We found at least 4 out of 5 houses that were involved in the crawl.
Yeah.
The landlord said, no, we don't want it. One landlord said, go ahead, I don't care.
Right.
But that took a lot of time. So if they have to come in for a permit, we'll know who the landlords are and how to contact them if there's a problem.
Okay. I
Right
just
now, we
can't
don't
imagine
know.
that they wouldn't, why would they even come in to get the permit?
Well, that's up to them to figure out.
Yeah, like, why-
But at least
why
it
would
gives,
they-
at least
they-
it gives the
right.
police an extra level of support.
Right, if they come in and get the permit.
Right.
I'm
Right.
assuming you're gonna make them aware that they need to have a permit.
Of course, we're gonna make them
Yes,
aware.
so they either come in, or if they don't have the party.
Well, they still have the party, they just don't have the permit.
Well, but we can
Emma,
shut the
sorry.
party down
I
then.
just wanted to make a process comment, which is that if the board decides this is something you want to consider, then we could write it up in a local law format and answer some of these, questions about how it would actually work, and then bring it to the public and have a public hearing. So I think that what we just need to figure out today is whether enough of the board wants to go ahead with it, that it's worth taking the time to write it up and put those details in writing. Is that where you're trying to go?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. And so that's kind of what I'm seeking, is that sense of, and maybe the best thing to do is let everybody go and reflect and write, email afterwards. We don't have to make
Fair,
it.
'cause-
We've been through this, I've been on this board for 21 years. I don't think we need to reflect that. I've asked every year for something like this, and you're the first supervisor to present it. So, yeah, I'm ready to go forward with this. We don't need to
I'm
wait.
ready.
Okay, so that's 3.
If I didn't make my point, I was like, I want it at 100, because anything less than that is just a small party.
Okay.
Over 100 is where the problems happen.
What number were you thinking, Mike, in terms of?
Look, I'd rather get the law and revise the number later. Let's
Okay.
just get the law out there first.
Sure. Okay, good idea.
Ryan, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not too settled yet on where the number lands, but, because I think with the nuisance law, there's already a provision to prevent, any activities that would be harmful or unlawful. But I don't know about the 100 for just the guests
If you
that
live
are
in
private
Fairview, you'd be
residents.
happy with a number of 30, but I'm trying to meet you halfway
Yeah,
here.
maybe, yeah, so.
And you feel, you're,
No, I'm all set, go for it.
okay, all right.
Bill,
That
I
gives- I
hear
think
Bill,
that's-
Bill said yes too.
We'll talk about afterwards about whether we want to do the work and put a local law in place and see if we can bring it forward, okay? And then that would give more time for public conversation. Okay, quick one, this one, I hope it is. So the Hometown Heroes program, it's very popular and it's very extensive. And both in my office and particularly for the highway department, it's a lot. And also, banners there's no sort of sunset clause for the banners. And there's language in there sort of saying, well, if after 8 or 10 years the banners start getting damaged, then families can pay to replace them and get a new banner. So the program, there's a lot of work involved. And so what I'm suggesting, and we've also run out of places to put them in Arlington. We've literally run out of phone poles. And it's a lot of work for the highway department. So what my suggestion was this, and I did talk with Mike Simon, and I talked with Joyce before she left, and, we've been talking to different people about it. With the idea that maybe we would display each banner for 3 years or 5 years, and then return it to the family, because the families pay for the banners, before it gets too worn. And perhaps put a cap on the total number of banners, and then enable people to, you know, that gives a room for new folks to come in and honor a hero in their family, without the program getting, I mean, we're already at 130 banners, and Joyce, actually, we closed the program last November because we weren't gonna be putting up any banners again until March, but I'm anticipating that we'll get at least 20, maybe 30, maybe more applications this spring. And it's a lot, it's great, but if we don't have any mechanism for, if we're gonna keep adding, we're gonna end up at 400 banners. And already Mike Simon and the highway folks have run out of banners in Arlington. There's no poles, right?
Right.
And it's a lot of work with Central Hudson to get more permits. So my thought would be that maybe we move to other parts of town. Maybe we sort of say there'll be 50 that are along Southgate or something like that, and 50 in Fairview and 50 in Arlington, or we sort of figure out how we're gonna do it. And then we have a ceremony each year where we give banners back to the families. I think that if this works for the board, I would wanna consult with the families, and see if this works, for the families as well, see if that's acceptable. But I just wanted to kind of get a sense from the board if that seems like a way to go forward. There are towns that are actually saying, I'm sorry, we're not gonna take any new applications now because they're just kind of overwhelmed. And I don't wanna do that because you wanna make sure that you keep the program open and inviting. But I'm a little worried about the highway department not being able to pick up leaves because they're still putting up banners in November. It's a huge thing.
And they can't be put on state roads, right?
I don't know. I think we've been doing it by telephone pole. No, I mean, we're working with the Central Hudson, electric poles, but I don't think that, I don't know that there's a.
Isn't Raymond Avenue a state
Might be
road?
nice to see a couple.
Yeah, they're on Raymond and
Raymond Avenue is a state road.
I just worry about the extra wind and stuff. That's a.
Exactly. Well, that's the other thing is
Share
that
them.
big wind storms come and there's a issue of tending them, and we've had veterans come in very upset because a windstorm took a banner down and we had to fix. So there's a fair amount of care that goes on with it. I do think it'd be nice to have them in different parts of town and not all just in Arlington. So maybe we can work on that too.
Yeah, and where I come from in Wisconsin, they only keep the banners up for 2 years. So they put them up the initial year, then they make the families pay another $100 to have them up a second year if they choose, and then they get the banner back.
Okay.
So that's, what you're suggesting is not unheard of.
Okay, every town seems to run this differently.
Yeah.
So, okay, if that makes sense, then I'll sort of try to proceed in that direction, so we can open it again this spring without, and if we get 30 new applications, we'll figure out how we're gonna do it, so. Okay, housing, we'll get back to housing then. I just wanted to say at the beginning of the conversation that, this is part of, the good cause eviction is part of this much larger package, right? The first thing we did was create the Citizens Committee on Housing Affordability. And then the second thing was we've worked on expanding opportunities for accessory dwelling units, making it much easier for people to put a small cottage in their, backyard or create a 2-bedroom space in their house. Within the current envelope of a building. So we've already done that with help from the Code Revision Committee that suggested that language. And the Code Revision Committee is also currently working on inclusionary zoning, which would mean that we would require developers who are building a certain number of over X number of units to set aside 1 in 10 units to be either affordable or workforce housing. That needs oversight, and so I know that the Code Revision Committee is talking with Hudson River Housing, which does that in other municipalities, to look at how that works. You have to guarantee that that housing remains affordable, that's been set aside, and that the people who rent it are eligible. And so there's that's the piece that they're trying to work out, but I think that's gonna come to the board later this year. And in addition, I think as a couple of people mentioned, we just approved the pilot project in Nesterly, which is a home sharing program. And actually, there's a Zoom call with Nesterly next Tuesday at 3 p.m. So if there's any board members who want to jump on and talk to the Nesterly folks about the details next Tuesday, we can do that. It's 3 p.m. next Tuesday. So we're working on getting that set up. And that's an opportunity for people who are current homeowners in the town to have a support system to figure out how to rent an extra bedroom and create home sharing opportunities. It started in Boston, and it's a pretty cool program that allows people to not set their rents lower in exchange for help with yard work or help with groceries or things of that sort. So it's helpful to people who are seeking to age in place, and then also creates affordable housing for people who may need it. So we've done all of those other things, and I know the inclusionary zoning is something that was on the recommendation list. One of the things on the list here is discouraging private equity purchases of residential property, hedge funds. We can talk about that tonight. I've referred it already to the legal department, and we're trying to figure out whether, in fact, it's a big concern that hedge funds own something like 2% of the residential units in the United States now, and they're aiming to own like 30%. And the question is there anything a municipality can do? Can a municipality pass some kind of a transfer tax or something of that sort that's specifically targeted at private equity or hedge funds to prevent the purchase, the buying up? If you go look at someplace like First Key online, you'll see that, like in the Atlanta rental market, tons and tons and tons of single-family homes have been purchased, and now they're being rented as by a hedge fund essentially, and so that's building that's that many, hundreds of houses that people can't buy, and as homeowners, and they become expensive rentals. So I think that there's a question about what legally we can do. And I think we're looking around to see if there's any other municipalities who have done this or what the rules are. New York did just I believe the governor's proposed a law this year that that private equity firms would not be able to make a bid on a property, a residential property, until it's been on the market for 75 days. Which may be that the state has done some investigation as to what their powers are or are not. But I'm happy to talk about that further. It didn't come up in the comments, but it's a big, big concern. I actually spoke with the members of the Dutchess County Association of Realtors on Friday, who are also really concerned about this. And it's not quite clear what the mechanisms are for making sure that a large percentage of residential property doesn't end up in the hands of hedge funds.
There is another choice we could do. We could work with our planning and zoning boards and our building department to try to, if you build down south, your checklist is a checklist for your plumbing permit, electric permit. All your permits that you need are already on a checkoff list. You come in with your project plans. You don't have to spend extra money on town engineers, architects, and all that. And our costs are too high in the town, and we've had people tell us that before. Our local developers will not develop in the town any longer because it takes so long to get all the approvals, to go through the planning and zoning board. Everybody has a different opinion. Maybe we should streamline it. If you want to build X amount of units, this is what you need. I mean, bring some of the developers in here, our local business leaders, and let them tell you how they can make it streamlined in the town. It will save them money in the long run. Then they could build these units quicker and cheaper, and then they could rent them cheaper or sell them if they're building single-family homes.
So that's moving on from the hedge fund issue to a different issue that we might want to talk about.
If we're looking for all different avenues, that's a good way to get housing built cheaper if you cut the costs for the developers.
Okay, I don't know if the housing committee is discussing that or not, but it's definitely worth talking about further. Okay, it's not one on the recommendations that was already brought to us, but I think it's worth discussing, so I'll put it on the list. Good cause eviction. We've heard a lot tonight about good cause eviction already. Do people have questions, comments, thoughts?
I just want to thank everybody for coming in because it helps me understand all the permutations, especially from the legal aspect. So thank you very much for your input, and I can't wait for it to come to a public hearing.
Anybody else?
I would just like to hear from the landlords, on the other side of the coin. To get their sense of, how they feel about it. I've talked to some privately offline about it, but I would like to get them to come in and speak a little bit about it too.
Right.
Or at a public hearing, because we're only hearing one side of it, so I'd like to hear the other side.
So I did talk to the Realtors Association on Friday and thought that they were gonna send a representative here. They are gonna send someone, looking for someone who would join the Citizens Committee so that there's that perspective. I think the big concern was for small local landlords. But, I've looked and I can't see where where the, it just doesn't seem onerous to me to landlords who are good landlords. It's essentially an anti-gentrification, issue, right? If inflation were at 15%, then landlords have a right under this law to raise rents 20%. It's, what CPI plus 5%. So it's definitely not a rent control bill, but it's essentially, as someone who wrote it said, it's targeted at the type of investor who's going to buy up a property, throw out the current tenants, and, really try to, double the rent and,
I guess
gentrify.
That's the disconnect, like, when is that happening?
Well,
In big cities, it's happening, in cities probably.
Well, has there been
You
any-
referenced Atlanta.
So,
that's my question, it's like, you have a right to remain in your home as long as you pay rent and follow your lease, well, then why are you being evicted? Like,
Well, there's lots of reasons. This wasn't an eviction, but I was contacted by a person that she fell on the property, had a successful lawsuit against the landlord, and when it came time to renew her lease, he said no. She had to leave.
well, wouldn't you want that tenant out too?
But you cannot do that that's not a legitimate reason. She had a real injury, and she won the lawsuit.
But, okay.
I too am thankful for the presentation, and I think it's something that I would really support, and I'm hoping that we will hear more from at the public hearing. But I think we've heard some really impactful stories about the unhoused and just how vulnerable people are when your rent could go up just because the landlord wants to arbitrarily do it. And I think the protections are essential and necessary.
And that's the other reason they're not evicted, they can't renew, is because the rent goes up too high. I had another one contact me that she was in a Section 8 house, and he was doing some renovations, and he doubled her rent, and she couldn't afford it. And she has her Section 8, but it's not enough, and she couldn't make up the difference.
It's not this would not be prevented by this law, I want to be clear, but I spoke to folks at one of the apartment complexes around here where the landlord was raising the rent and then using that higher rent to renovate certain units, but not, this woman said, well, why are you raising my rent? And the landlord, when she called down to, I think it was in New Jersey where the landlord was, said, well, we're gonna take, 10% of the units and spruce them up and make those more expensive units. So we're charging you more so that we can upgrade other units.
I also
Well,
think,
they were not raising her rent more than 10%. So I don't think this law would stop that from happening. But it's the kind of situation that renters confront all the time, right? Is getting, paying more, and I've talked to people who haven't had hot water for several months and pretty major issues like that, and have said, well, in this housing market, I'm afraid to say anything because, my landlord has a reputation for just throwing people out, and I don't know where else I'm gonna go. I don't have anything else.
But there are a lot of good landlords.
Absolutely there are.
There are the slumlords, and a lot of them have reputations, and, a lot of people know who they are, and that's unfortunate, but, it's not all renters. Not all landlords.
I agree, but I don't see how a good landlord who's doing what they should be doing is gonna be hurt by this law. I think that that they'll still be able to.
Well, there's always two
do
sides to
anything.
every coin, and, I'd just like to hear the other side of it, before I really made an opinion on it either way. And, most of the people in the room tonight are from the city of Poughkeepsie. That's not the town.
So what's to stop somebody that owns a building in the town, if they know this is coming, they raise the rent to whatever they can before this takes effect? Now you have 60 or 70-year-old people living on rent controlled or modified rent, whatever, and they raise rent will usually go up maybe 3%. Now it's going up 10% because they're trying to cover for the next couple of years. Has there been any studies done on any other municipalities that have done this to see where they're at 3 to 5 years out? How it's affected the tenants?
Well, New Jersey has had this since 1974.
But I'm talking about
But-
locally here, not,
And locally, I don't think that there has been any, anticipatory hike. I mean, if the person were gonna raise their rent 10%, they can actually do that under the law.
but you're hurting the people that
depending on
would
what
normally
inflation
raise
rates
it
are.
3%. That's all I'm saying. And I would like to know what, the municipalities that put it together, Trevor, you have any
Well,
numbers?
wait, so here's what I think is gonna happen, is we're gonna end up getting in a
All right.
dialogue, it's gonna get very complicated. What
Okay.
I'm gonna suggest is that, that those folks who came and presented, if you don't mind staying a little while longer, and we can have some informal conversations afterwards,
I'll
that could
send
be
Trevor
very
my
helpful.
questions.
Okay, and other folks who spoke, it would be helpful to talk more, right? And that also includes, offline, reaching out, again, till we got a letter from the county realtors and others, and just making sure we hear all perspectives. I'm not sure I see two perspectives here, I think there's a lot of perspectives. The vast majority of people who are renters in the town, mathematically, are living in the big complexes where there are 80 or 100 or 110 or 160 units, right? We have a lot of large rental complexes, right? And then there are people who have a duplex and they're living in one half and renting in the other, right? I mean, there's a whole range of landlords and a whole range of tenants in different kinds of situations. So it's helpful to hear of different perspectives.
I just want to say really quickly, in my ward, in Ward 2, which is kind of Red Oaks Mill to Spring Road and a little bit over on the inside of Spackenkill, you might be surprised that because they look like single-family homes, you say, oh, those aren't rentals. They're not rentals. There's at least one rental on every street in my neighborhood, but you don't know it because they look like single-family homes, and you assume it's owned, but it's not. So I understand, we have apartments, but those landlords, they don't live in the town. They had their house, they bought it, they lived there for a while, they grew up in that home, and then they said, I'm gonna move to Binghamton, or I'm gonna move to Massachusetts or New Jersey. And they're fine, I mean, they're okay landlords, I'm not saying they're slumlords, but they're not around when something breaks. So that's not here nor there, but I wanted to stick up for my little Ward 2 with all my single-family homes and say that there's a lot of renters that they're not visible.
If there are questions, that's one helpful thing that can come out of a workshop meeting. If people want to know what percentage of landlords live in the town or in Dutchess County and live elsewhere, what's the pattern of rentals in the town? This is a good opportunity at workshop meetings to kind of articulate questions or things we want to know. So Mike's already got a list of questions. We can all make a list of questions and try to find out what we
Who
want
would
to know.
have that data, the assessor, do you think?
Well, Dutchess County just did a housing survey, and there's a lot of stuff online in that survey, including a pretty detailed list of all the apartment complexes. Some of them responded to the county's queries, some of them didn't, but they're all there in terms of how many units they have, and in some cases they shared their levels of rent and other information others didn't share. That's kind of interesting, which ones responded and which ones didn't. So there's at least a fair amount of information
I meant
there.
more like the single-family homes.
Yeah, it would be hard to find out. We were
Right.
wondering
I mean, I go on parcel access constantly throughout the day for many
Yes,
different
and you
reasons,
can
and
see
you
there.
can see, you
Yeah.
can tell
LLCs
there.
and then-
People will call me up with a concern, and then I'll look it up, and I'm like, well, they're not really, they're renting, but that doesn't matter, but.
Right.
Yeah, and
But
the
instead
person
of
lives
going,
in
like, would
Texas
you have
and-
to go individually to each
That's
house?
what I was wondering if there was a way to figure
Yeah,
that out.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, Jennifer might have the
That's
data.
what I think she
Right.
probably would.
Right.
We could ask Jennifer as well. The other issue is that there was a law that was there's not much transparency around LLCs, so it is often difficult to figure out who owns a property, because if it's in an LLC, it can be hard to, sometimes that's somebody who lives nearby, right? Sometimes it's not, so it's hard to tell. Okay, so then we'll go through the rest of the agenda, and then those folks who are willing to stay and continue the conversation, I would love to talk some more. Thank you. And questions also, and we'll see how we want to move forward. Reports, for the supervisor's report, I'm going to keep it really short tonight, but just wanted to flag a couple of additional things. We did agree also as a housing measure that we would like to keep, that we would like to put a lower cap on the number of short-term rentals in the town, and that we, the board, we passed a local law empowering ourselves to do so, but we haven't set the cap. So I think that we should bring a measure forward sometime soon. My proposal, I think, at the meeting, we talked about this, was to allow something in the order of 5 or 6 unhosted in the town, and to allow something like 18 or 20 hosted in the town, so that we give some people the opportunity to have that type of rent, short-term rental, and have other people the chance to be, to operate those businesses, but that we're not, we have a little over 16,000 households in the town. So I think something like 25, 30 short-term rentals is not severely impacting the housing market. But we're setting a cap so that we don't end up having these ADUs that we're encouraging people to create all become Airbnbs. The goal in encouraging people to create accessory dwelling units is to create long-term housing, not to create hundreds of Airbnbs, right? So does that make sense? Do people have thoughts about where we would set a limit in terms of unhosted and hosted short-term rentals?
Let's not talk numbers. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Too many numbers?
No, we'll get into the whole nuisance argument of how many.
Yeah,
How many?
we're
How
having
many?
numbers problems tonight, yeah.
I wouldn't be able
Where are we
to
at with
figure that out.
unhosted right now? I mean, legally,
It's the
we only
enforcement.
have 4,
That's the
right?
problem.
We have
Right.
4 that have come before the board,
Yep,
right?
we've approved 4, there may be 1 or 2
I
more
don't
in
know
the
if we've
works,
approved all
but,
4 yet, but
Yeah, I hope
You
we
know.
haven't, Conifer hasn't been approved.
not yet.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
But so,
I think we've
then
approved 3.
3,
Yep.
right, and then we have that one hanging out there, and then we have,
So if you hit the limit, what happens to
I know.
those after the limit?
We
right.
tell people they
Well,
can't.
that's fine, I just, they're operating anyway, right? Like, that's the
Problem.
the enforcement would.
Well, we're working on that.
I know, and
Chrissy is working.
that's a
yeah.
huge thing,
Right.
and I know we have the software to do so, or, the company, Granicus,
Well, then we have our new deputy zoning
yeah,
officer, so we have 2 zoning people now, and they are making it a priority, because they've sent multiple letters to people who are running Airbnbs without coming in, and said, you gotta come in, and so those folks who are doing so without
we
having
set
come
it at
in,
20,
20?
yeah,
Hosted or unhosted?
I mean, 20 of each.
Hmm.
I mean, it's hard to decide, I think the majority of people that have spoken about the 4 that we have are sort of anti that hosted, and, so you gotta listen to the people.
Mm.
If they want less, then we have no cap now, correct?
No.
Oh, yeah, no, we have a cap. We put
The
in,
cap
was
is
it
30, we have
We
no
haven't
cap
reached it
on,
yet.
we have no cap on the hosted
Unhosted,
ones.
right.
We have a cap of 30 on unhosted,
Right.
which seems
30.
pretty high.
Yeah,
And
so
we've
maybe-
only had
Even if you cut it
3
in
that
half.
we've approved.
Yeah, maybe we go to
and
15,
a couple more.
something like that.
Yeah.
Just to see where,
Yeah,
Otherwise, I'm gonna have to bring out about historic houses too, and this is a mechanism for historic houses to remain viable, because the day of the town museum is over. It's impossible for these historic houses to generate an income and still be available to the public. And many of them now are Airbnbs, and they're really lovely.
That's
So-
another issue that I think.
That's another issue, and I brought the data out when we started all this before, I can bring it out again. And we can discuss that if we want to add a clause for historic structures.
so maybe we slice it 15, like you said, 30,
I
go
think it's a
bring it.
problem right now in the town, though. I know we want to keep communities, but there's really nothing, I think what we did was fine, I think we should see where we go with the permits.
Right, like, are we
If
even
it
at
gets,
the?
we're not even up, we
Right.
have what, 4?
Yeah, and I guess that was the leverage we gave ourselves by giving the permit process to the board, was to say, but again, Mike, right. I mean,
If it's
so-
too many, we just say no.
So what I'm hearing is that we might set a cap on the hosted ones, at say 20 hosted ones or something like that, because we have no cap on those. And since we have the capacity ourselves to regulate the number of unhosted on a 1 at a time basis, we could do that. I guess my concern is that, by the time someone's running it and coming for approval, it's different from saying, look,
Yes.
our overall policy is, we don't really want unhosted Airbnbs on every street in town, right? And that's using up housing that could be used for other purposes. And we want to, and we don't want to, we want to let people know, there's room for a few of these. If
Right.
we can put you on a wait list, but we're only allowing 5 or 6 of these at a time. And
I think you also run the risk of it being arbitrary if you have been permitting them and then one comes
Yes, you
along where there's
stop
no
it.
particular
No,
problem,
right,
but you
right.
say,
There has
well,
to
we
be a
just
lower
don't,
cap.
yeah.
I understand, right.
Yeah.
Got
Because
it.
you would not want to be
Yeah.
that person that gets stopped.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then they might have a legal leg to stand on.
Yeah.
Do we know how many hosted there are? Have we asked zoning, because they've been sent, they give out those permits, we don't actually see them. So do we know the number?
We have some out there that we're not sure whether they're hosted or unhosted, because they haven't come in, right?
Yeah.
But at peak, there were something like 35 or 40 operating in the town, maybe, that we could track on Granicus. Many of those are no longer doing that. So there's fewer than there were,
Okay.
apparently. At least they're not,
And do
we can track whether they are actually receiving
Do you know if we
guests
only
and
track
it doesn't-
Airbnb, or do they do Verbo and all of those as well?
I thought they
They,
did all.
they do.
them all.
They
I
do.
thought they did them all.
So,
But how many,
And there's going to be a new state registry that they're starting to track all of them. I think Dutchess County is working on it, so that they'll, for tax purposes, right?
good.
They want
Oh, of
make
course,
sure
sure.
that they're.
They
well,
definitely-
that's the issue, right?
Yeah.
Or
well,
an issue.
that's why we're not seeing them, is, I mean, the fee is pretty substantial.
I mean,
Right.
maybe the hosted can turn into Nesterly or
Well,
something. down the line.
Nesterly
It's
and
more for-
having an accessory dwelling unit, there's a continuum of options here, but we definitely want people to create the longer term housing,
Right.
not the Airbnbs, right? We need people for our residents.
So I think
how
the
they're creating.
15 is a good number. At
Unhosted.
most,
You mean
unhosted,
unhosted.
unhosted, yeah. I don't know about the hosted. We have a cap on that of 30 as well?
We have
No,
no
we don't
cap.
have any cap.
So, okay,
So we can't have this kind of discussion just between
think we
us, it has
left
to
it.
be open meetings.
Well, I
I
think
feel-
we,
Correct.
I think we
I
left
feel
no-
like we're just, brainstorming, but it's okay to do it in public. but I
it's, we can get a sense here of
Yeah.
which way we wanna go, and then we can bring a proposal, and then we can have further public hearing and
Okay.
further discussion, but we're sort of trying to get a general sense of
But
which
I
direction.
understand Ann's
Yep.
point, if you're
Yep.
you've been on the list for a while and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go register, and they're like, oh, too late.
Right.
We set a limit now, and
Yeah.
well, they
But
have
as
a
long as there's a
timeline
limit,
to
yeah,
register,
versus just
and they
saying.
should register and pay attention to the letters that are being sent to them.
Right.
true.
We've now been over a year trying to get people to come in and get, so I think it's
Right,
time, we
right,
are
it's
taking
time.
people, Chrissy is taking people to court for not coming in to get their approval, so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna stop there. Oh, one last thing. We had some water bills, about 20 water bills got mangled in the sealer. And so we've had some people calling who don't wanna pay the late fee because they never got a bill. We had about 18 calls so far. So I just wanna, at the next meeting, probably bring a resolution asking to waive late fees for
Yeah.
anyone who didn't receive a bill in this cycle. And we will work to get the sealer working properly next
That's
time.
fine.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, good, that was an easy one, all right, that'll come next week. Okay, committee and liaison reports, so open the floor to people who wanna speak to committees that have met and where things are.
Well, senior committee's meeting on the 18th. Fire committee met on the 4th, and we're still looking for some training for the best, and there is some training that Hochul has, Governor Hochul has said is coming down the pipeline, and I know we did find a private company that offers it, but we don't know how much they charge. It's hazardous response tactics for battery energy storage systems. We're gonna contact them and see what they charge. I mean, we're not looking to spend money on it, but we'll let companies know that who's offering it anyway. Arlington is actively going to be looking in the next couple of months to recruit students from Arlington and Spackenkill to learn about the fire service and come in and try to get a career out of being a fireman. We're still doing, town is still doing the inspections in the town for compliance for smoke alarms and what have you, and we're waiting for Bruce to come up and welcome aboard, so, and we're gonna look at trying to raise the fee for compliance inspections. If there's a second time you have to go out, we don't usually charge it, but the recommendation was that maybe we should raise it a little bit. So we're gonna wait till Bruce comes back to make a decision.
See what he thinks, he's here, this is his third day on the job, Bruce Flowers, our new building department head, so, you can chat with him at your next meeting maybe, or sometime soon. Okay, great, other, committees?
I think I have some things from recreation. On Thursday, February the 20th at 9:30, it's your opportunity to have coffee with a cup at the senior center. The flyers are available online, but this is an event that's coming up, and there's also every Tuesday, 3 to 4:30, children ages 6 months through preschool, there is the opportunity to check out the Big Blue Imagination Playground blocks. And I remember at the beginning of the year, Supervisor Edwards had spoken about the type of intergenerational community fellowship, and I think this is headed in that direction. So if you have a child aged 6 months through preschool, there's an opportunity to expand their imagination with the Big Blue Imagination Playground blocks. And that's every Tuesday, 3 to 4, but a parent must be present. And then there's a line dance with Alexandria, Thursdays at 12:30 at the Senior Center. Please sign up for that. A nominal cost of $3 per session. And there's more on our website, but that's all I have for this evening.
Okay, there's a bunch of new senior center programs on balance and things like that, as well as line dancing and other things, so that's great. Okay, other committee reports, liaison reports?
Yeah, I'll just mention one thing. I don't know if you said it, Ryan, about the ski thing on Friday? Right, so Friday at Victor.
The West Point Ski.
Yeah, at the West Point Ski Resort or Mountain is $10 skiing and $10 rentals put on by the town of Poughkeepsie Rec Department. So from 3, or maybe it's after work time, but like 3 to 7, 3 to 8, come one, come all across the river, $10, and the whole family can ski on Valentine's Day. This
Happy
is Friday.
Valentine's, yeah.
Yes.
And should be
Great.
snow, hopefully there's snow.
Right, there might be some
More snow.
snow.
I can tell you the Joint Water Board, is the city of Poughkeepsie, who administers, does all the finance part of that, is up to date on the audits, and soon the 2024 audit will be done, I think March or April, but that's exciting. And Doreen and I are very excited about that. They're also still ongoing with many meetings about the intermunicipal agreement as they flesh out the city and town's relationship as they share that water department. And the Climate Smart Task Force, we met last Thursday, and we were reviewing all the current town community environmental projects like heat pumps and electric vehicles. We're preparing for a busy and exciting Earth Month in April. And it's we kind of partner. The Climate Smart Task Force works with Lisa Call on repair cafes, and we had a very successful repair cafe last Saturday. A lot of our members help her out. So I don't know if you know what a repair cafe is, but it's when they get a lot of fixers, people who can fix, they have expertise in small motors and garments, knitting, electronics, jewelry, leather goods, appliances, woodworking, and they will be there to help you fix items that are broken. That keeps the things out of landfills, and it also allows you to hold on to your favorite sentimental piece and let it be a working sentimental piece instead of that broken thing that I love that my mom used to have. So it's a great thing. Look in our website for the next repair cafe.
Okay.
I'll touch real quick on the CAC. So we have launched the food scraps recycling program. We are getting people interested. Many people have signed up. We are this close to like giving everyone the green light, and we will be offering our kits. There is just one missing piece of this puzzle that is, I'm waiting, look at my email every hour to see when it will arrive. It's just one part of the kit. But once that's green lighted, anyone who has signed up or would still like to sign up, they can do that on the town website, and we will offer free food scrap recycling. There will be 2 drop-off points, one right here down at Town Hall at the lower level, and then one at the senior center. So that has been, basically launched, except for the kits need to get into the residents' hands. So just keep watching your emails, keep watching the websites. Any day now, we are going to give the green light to come in and get your kit. It's a free kit. And you must sign up for the kit, and then anybody can compost though. Even if you're not, didn't get the kit, you can compost in your own glass jar, plastic container, anything that you want to bring your food scraps to the town and dump it into our garbage cans that we have. Again, one will be at Town Hall and one will be at the senior center. And then just to piggyback a little bit about Earth Month. So April is Earth Month. We celebrate it all month long. Each ward collaborates a Earth Day pickup. It doesn't have to take place on Earth Day, which is April 20th, I believe, or the 22nd, but around there. So pay attention, see what's, put out in your ward or through the website. But we try to organize small groups, maybe a neighborhood. Maybe you live in a neighborhood where you and your neighbors just want to go out, pick up trash. Unfortunately, there's a lot of trash in the town, and it's not just the state roads. I live off of 44. There's a ton of trash, but it's the smaller roads too, and it's very sad that people litter the way that they do. So get a group together, Boy Scouts, maybe a club sport or your local neighborhood association, and look for details on that. So there'll be a lot of noise and excitement around Earth Month.
Great, thank you.
Okay, yeah, and Historic Preservation, they're also getting very excited to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the country. And they're planning a year-long celebration with multiple lectures and events and interesting things. We're even talking about painting fire hydrants. So we're going to be pulling all that together. And they're talking about starting this July. So it'll be starting from this July to July of 2026. And the Finance Committee is going to meet this Friday, and we're going to be going over last year's budgets, and they're getting ready to put it to bed and have a presentation before the town board of last year's.
And also the comptroller's reviewing, how we ended 2024,
Yeah.
so we can do a assessment of where we are now. Okay, great. Anybody else? We're good? Okay, then I move that we suspend the rules for anyone here who may want to speak on items that were not on tonight's agenda. So moved?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, is there anyone who wants to speak on items that were not on our agenda tonight? Anyone in the room or anyone online? Doreen?
So if it was something on the agenda, I can't speak about it?
Well, no, you can speak. You may speak on any issue that you would like to speak about at all.
Okay, it was worded slightly differently tonight, so.
Sorry.
Okay, so, first of all, when the accessory dwelling units, law came before the board, I strongly suggested that they not be allowed to be used as, short-term rentals. And I still have that opinion. I think they should have been at least 6 months. And that's something that you could go back and amend that law if you're really concerned about providing housing for people and not just, Airbnbs. And I also, along those same veins, the unhosted commercials properties, I don't think they should be allowed at all. Again, that's taking away from potential rental properties. And as far as short-term rentals, I want to remind those who weren't on the board before, this was voted in May of 2023. It was to go into effect November of 2023. Here we are, February of 2025, and you have a handful of permits that have been granted. So there's still people operating illegally. Sort of like what Ann Berger said about the parties. People are going to do it whether they have a permit or not. So that's a problem. And then, Mike Safone, you had said about that costs are too high for developers. They don't want to build in the town anymore. Well, where's there left to build in the town, Mike? And I each month foil construction reports. Maybe you should take a look at that. Stratford Farms subdivision, the Gables, Phase 4,
Okay.
Eastdale Village, Hudson Heritage, Tamarind, wait a minute, I'm not done. Tamarind
read every
Heights
list.
subdivision, 1 Dutchess Avenue, you have Shady Brook Trailer Park, you have Arthur May, you have South Hills Commons. Do you want me to keep going? There's Creek Road Park.
I'm well aware of that, and I know they're very expensive units, but if you want somebody to build something that's going to be less costly so people can actually buy or afford to live in them that are not market rate, you have to bring the cost down. By streamlining our efforts in the town.
I think
and
it's a
saving
little
costs.
late now, Mike. Maybe you should have thought of that before. You've been on the board
Wait.
20 years that I've been coming.
But
It's a little late.
So
You have
wait, we're
Eastdale
gonna,
Project, Eastdale Apartments, IDA tax breaks. Not one of those
Okay,
have an affordable housing component.
So thank you, Doreen, for your comments. I think a conversation offline could continue as that's sort of beginning toward the conversation offline for those of us who are in the room about housing. I just don't want to end up being here for a really long time going back and forth. Is there anyone, thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else who would like to speak who's in the room or on Zoom? Seeing none, thank you everyone for a productive conversation on a range of things. I move that, oh, there's one last thing. We are having a food pantry. Our second food pantry in Town Hall will be here in this room. Food will be available at 9 o'clock tomorrow. It looks like the snow's gonna turn into rain, and so the food bank truck will be able to make it from Albany. We'll have 8,000 pounds of food here. We'll have volunteers starting at 7. It is state funded and through Dutchess Outreach, so you do not have to be a town of Poughkeepsie resident to come and get food. Okay, thanks everybody. I move that we adjourn at 10 till 9. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Meeting adjourned then. Thank you all so much and stay safe out in the snow. All right.